We are now joined by a political analyst, independent commentator and former diplomat, Tom Wheeler. A very good morning to you, Tom, and welcome.
Morning, Elvis.
Now, firstly, we are less than a day before the elections in Israel, and Netanyahu is said to be trailing behind, it seems. What is your take on that?
Well, that certainly seems to be the case. I think people are tired of him. He's had two terms, 3 years and 6 years, and it's time for renewal, particularly with some of the things he's been saying. He's been talking about plots to get rid of him by the Swedes, and people are starting to think there's something wrong with this man.
Mm-hmm. What can we read from these opinion polls? Do you think that Israel now wants a new leader, so to speak, and out with Netanyahu completely? Is it the end of the strongman era and the beginning of diplomacy?
Well, there are two front runners. One is Isaac Herzog, and the other is Netanyahu. Now, Herzog is a very different person to Netanyahu. He's not a populist. He's not a charismatic person, but he offers a different perspective on the issues that face Israel. He's much more moderate, but neither of them are going to win outright. The amount of votes that they can gain is not sufficient. So both of them will have to create coalition governments with other minor parties.
We heard in the insert that the focus for Netanyahu on security could be maybe the death knell in his coffin, and that the focus should be now on the economy.
Exactly. For everywhere in the world, it's important. Israel's main export partner is Europe, and Europe is in a bad state economically. So they must look at how they can pull the economy together rather than be worried about whether the Iranians are going to have a nuclear weapon or not.
Mm-hmm. Now, what can we expect from Herzog in this particular case if he becomes the president?
Difficult to tell. He's got a long road ahead because he's got to put this coalition government together. The unknown factor is the Arab Israelis, who have now formed a single party and could form a major bloc, which either party, if they wanted to form a coalition government, would have to probably take them in. 20% of the voters are Arabs. And that is something that is new, that they have now come together to form a single party, Arab Union, and probably have to be taken into account to get the requisite number of votes in the parliament, in the Knesset, to actually have a government that will hold together.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's look at Netanyahu. For him, he went to the US, to the Congress there, and will that perhaps have a quest for his fourth term in office, maybe a negative effect in terms of that, because it was very negatively accepted by President Barack Obama?
Yes, he refused to see him.
Mm-hmm.
He was not consulted. Netanyahu was invited there by the Republicans, who are in the majority in both houses of the Congress, but Obama was not consulted. So this is a tactical blunder, to put it mildly. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when Netanyahu started attacking the US negotiations with Iran on the nuclear program in that country, this only made the situation worse.
Mm-hmm. What does that spell for US-Israeli relations, though?
Whoever wins will have to try and rebuild them, because Israel is very dependent on the United States in many ways, both financially and political support for, a legislation that passes. And there's a very big Jewish lobby in the United States called AIPAC, and Netanyahu spoke to them as well before he spoke in Congress. Now, these people are very influential, very large funders and so on. So it's in both sides' interest to solve this problem going forward.
I just want to go back to Isaac Herzog. He's not a charismatic leader, is he?
Not at all. That's his biggest problem. That unlike Netanyahu, who can whip up the population with his speeches and so on, and his rallies he's been holding all over the place, almost frantic at the fear of losing. But at the same time, I think that the Jewish voters have indicated or the Israeli voters have indicated that they're tired of the stuff, that they want to change. And they want someone who's thoughtful and who can deal with those economic issues you referred to, rather than being hung up with security.
Is it perhaps that we can read more into this, that the Israelis probably want a change of scene for now, or do they really look at the economy and stability in the region and say, hang on a second, we need to change this?
Well, you're asking me questions I probably don't know the answers to. but you know, they say a change is as good as a rest. And perhaps this is what's coming down the track. The fact that Herzog has already expected to win more seats for his own party, which is also a coalition with another party, Haduna, and this may mean that, you know, he's the obvious choice for the president of Israel to ask to form a coalition.
Isaac Herzog, when he comes to, if he wins the elections, what would that spell in terms of Palestinian relations with Israel?
It may be better because up to now Netanyahu has made various promises, but he's reneged on them, and he's allowed the construction of more settlements in East Jerusalem and in the Palestinian area. I visited there a few years ago, and you go through the barrier, there are just blocks and blocks of housing around that area. Now, I think that Herzog will probably negotiate in good faith to create a two-state solution.
Mr. Wheeler, as always, thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
Great pleasure.
That is Tom Wheeler, an independent commentator and former diplomat, joining us here, giving us a breakdown in terms of the elections. Remember, that's tomorrow, and we're going to keep you updated with that story. It's a big unfolding story happening tomorrow. But